Yes.
And I found out.
Huh?
Yesterday when I called you for.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome. 7th and 8th, we're doing our competition for our bridges we had to build. Huh? 6, I'm grading. Because I have a crap load of grade. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to have to edit that out. So, over here, remember we talked about evaluate. Evaluate means to plug in.
For X.
For X.
You gotta rewrite it.
So wherever X is, I'm going to plug in a 4. Hey, excuse me. Okay, so h of 4 equals the cube root of 2 times 4 minus 8 plus 7. If this is not your strong suit to do it in your head, I'm not asking you to do it in your head. But please put it in the calculator nonetheless. So, to put it in the calculator, you're going to hit Control, caret, put in 3, caret. Caret is the pointy thing that looks like the tip of a carrot. Alright, so I'm going to put in 2 parentheses 4 minus 8 outside of the square root plus 7, and I get 5. So my answer is 5. Okay, let's look at it mathematically. 4 minus 8. Negative 4. Negative 2 times 2. Negative 8. What number times itself 3 times gives me negative 8? Negative 2. Negative 2 plus 7 is 5. Okay, cube root means that there's a number that times itself 3 times to give me that answer. So the cube root of negative 8 is negative 2, because negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 equals negative 8. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 equals 8. Negative 8.
How is it a number 2?
Because if I did positive 2, I would get a positive 8. But I don't need a positive 8. I need a negative 8.
How do you put cube root 3? How do you?
The caret.
The caret, the control caret.
Oh.
Okay? So that's what this means. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's what you do. All right, solve. When we solve, we do what? We plug in y. Plug in y. So wherever y is, I'm going to plug in a 4. So 4 equals the cube root of cube root of 2 times x minus 8 plus 7. How do I get x by itself? Subtract 7 from both sides, cancels out, and I'm left with negative 3 equals the cube root of 2 times x minus 8. How do I get rid of a cube root? You cube both sides. It's the key to unlock it, so it sets it free. So what is negative 3 cubed? Negative 27. If you do not know what that is, you go to the calculator. You put parentheses, negative 3, caret, cubed, and I get negative 27. Okay? Oopsie. Go down. So I have negative 27 equals 2 times x minus 8. I can either distribute or I can go ahead and divide by 2. Divide by 2. And what's negative 27 divided by 2? Negative 13.5. Again, if that's not my strong suit, I can put negative 27 divided by 2. And if I put the decimal, it will give it to me in a decimal. And what is it? Negative 13.5. Okay? So I have negative 13.5 equals x minus 8. How do I get rid of a negative 8? Add 8 to both sides. And I get what?
Negative 5.5.
Okay, so let's recap. When it says to solve for x, that means you plug in for y. I plug in for y. Wherever there is f of x or y, I'm going to put a 4. Everything else is going to stay the same. My goal becomes to get x by itself. So I start to do PEMDAS backwards. Remember SADMEP. I'm doing PEMDAS backwards. So I check the bottom. It says, am I adding or subtracting anything outside of a parentheses or an exponential? Yes, I am adding 7. How do I cancel out a positive 7? I subtract 7. I make it a negative 7. Plus 7, positive 7, minus 7 is 0. So is it there any longer? No. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. 4 minus 7 is negative 3. So I'm left with negative 3 equals the cube root of 2 times x minus 8. Well, before I can do anything with this cube root, inside this cube root, I have to get rid of it. How do you get rid of any root? You square it, you cube it, you put it to the 4th power. You put it to what it is, right? So this is a cubic root, so I'm going to put it to the cubic power. Cubic power means I multiply this number how many times? 3 times. So negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is negative 27. Now my cube root is totally free. So now I have negative 27 equals 2 times x minus 8. So now I'm at the multiplying and dividing part. If I'm multiplying, the opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I divide. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Negative 27 divided by 2. Just like if I have $27 and I divide it by 2 people, we're each going to get $13.50. So it's negative 13.5. Now my parentheses are free, right? So 13.5, negative 13.5 equals x minus 8. I have a negative 8. How do I cancel out a negative 8? I add. What I do to one side, I do to the. So x equals negative 5.5. Do we have clarity? All right. Because if you did not understand that part, when we're about to do it again, you're going to be just as confused. Okay? What do we say find means? What do we say find means?
Evaluate.
It means to evaluate. However, this inverse tells us to do what before we evaluate?
Switch to x and y.
Switch x and y. So I have to switch x and y first. So when I switch x and y, it's going to become x equals the cubic root of 2 times y minus 8 plus 7. I literally switch x and y. Now can I evaluate? So now I can plug in for x, right? So wherever x is, I'm putting what? 10. So 10 equals the cubic root of 2 times y minus 8 plus 7. On this problem, what I'm going to go through is I'm not going to simplify along the way. I'm going to wait to the very end to simplify, okay? Because maybe this method will help some people be more comfortable and get clarity. What ends up happening is I do not simplify at all. I don't evaluate. I don't make, if it subtracts evenly, I don't do it at all. I wait to the complete end. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 7. What I do to one side, I have to do to the, so this side is 10 minus 7 equals the cubic root of 2 times y minus 8. How do we get rid of a cube root? I'm sorry. We cube it. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm still with 10 minus 7 cubed now equals 2 times y minus 8. How do I get y by itself? Get my parentheses alone. I divide by 2. Divide by 2. So now I have 10 minus 7 cubed divided by 2 equals y minus 8. What do I have? I add 8. The reason why we're doing this way is so that you see every single step you've done along the way. Divided by 2 plus 8, and that will give me my What can you do with this whole thing?
Plug it in back here.
Plug it in the calculator.
Why didn't you like subtract 10 minus 7?
I wanted you to see every single step. So I left every single step free. You saw where I subtracted 7. You saw that I cubed it. You saw that I divided by 2. And you saw that I added 8. Okay? So now I can put all of that into the calculator. Control, divide. I'm going to put parentheses. 10 minus 7 cubed divided by 2 plus 8. And what do I get? Control, enter, and what do I get? 21.5. I either can have 43 halves or I can have 21.5. So maybe waiting to see everything together can help some of you guys see your steps and see why you're doing those steps. So I just showed you 2 different ways of doing it. It is totally up to you on which way you want to do it. Yes. So we know y equals 21.5. But do you see what happens if we keep all our steps together and we're not evaluating? Does it make sense to what's happening now? You're taking everything from one side and doing the total opposite on the other. Okay? Let me draw my arrow real quick so you can know where I went for my next step. All right, any questions? Okay. Let's go down here. I'm going to do 4 with you, and then 5 I'm going to leave you to do on your own. All right, 4, again, simple enough, right? We're evaluating, right? That means we're going to plug in for who?
X.
We're going to plug in for x, okay? So, cube of 10 equals negative 1/3 times 10 minus 7 squared plus 4. If I cannot do this in my head, or I am not comfortable doing this in my head, what should I do? Calculator, because am I taking that away from you? No, I'm allowing you to use the calculator. So I want you to take this moment and plug this into the calculator. And you're going to tell me what I get.
1.
So the answer is 1.
All that for 1.
All of that for 1. 1 awesome answer. Yeah. That's what happens. All right. So now the thing here that makes this problem a little higher level is that we're going to understand the fact that cube 10 is not 1-to-1. The reason why it's not 1-to-1, what kind of function is this? It's quadratic. Is a quadratic function 1-to-1? No. It passes the vertical line test, but it doesn't pass the horizontal, because every point except the vertex has another point, right?
Yeah.
Every y value except the vertex y value has another x value. Okay? So it wants to know, well, what other number can I plug in for x that will give me 1? So the question is now, when else does q of x equals 1? And it wants me to solve that. Because it says solve, what does this solve tell me I'm going to do? Plug in for y. Because we know q of 10 equals what? 1. So q of x equals
1.
So that means we're going to plug in for y, because we do not know what y is. We do not know what q of x is. All right, so let's plug in for y. So 1 equals negative 1/3 times x minus 7 squared plus 4. I'm going to subtract 4. What's 1 minus 4? Negative 3 equals negative 1/3 times x minus 7 squared. How do you get rid of a fraction? You do what? I heard it. Multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal means you keep the negative if there's a negative, but you flip the fraction. So my negative becomes a positive. My 1 and 1 will cancel out, and my 3 and 3 will cancel out. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Well, what's negative 3 divided by 1?
3.
What kind of 3? A negative 3. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. So now I have positive 9 equals x minus 7 squared. I do what? I heard it. Square root. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. Okay? Does anyone know what happens when you actually take the square root of a number? No. What happens when you take the square root of a number?
It's like what times what? Or what times itself equals this.
Okay, it's what times itself gives me this. Well, think about this. If I have 3 times 3, that gives me 9. What about negative 3 times negative 3? 9. It gives me 9 also. So that means when you actually square root a number, you end up with 2 answers. You end up with negative 3 equals x minus 7, and you end up with positive 3 equals x minus 7. That's why with the quadratic formula, you know that x equals negative b plus or minus the square root, the quadratic. That is why it says plus or minus, because you're going to end up with a negative answer and a positive answer. Okay? So that means if I solve it, I'm going to end up with how many answers? 2. So on this x side, I'm going to end up with what? 4 equals x. And what do I end on the other side? And then we already know 10 was one of them. So our lost x was 4. So our lost x was 4. So now we know both of the x's that this parabola will intersect at 1. So it will be at 4, 1 and at 10, 1. And that parabola will hit. Yes, Danquise. Danquise, I have your quiz, by the way.
Yeah, I know. How did you get -3?
Okay, the reason why we said when you take the square root of a number, how many solutions are there actually? 2. One is a negative solution and one is a positive solution.
Now I'm
That's
talking about right there from the fraction point.
here.
Yeah.
You multiply by the reciprocal. In order to cancel out a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal because we want that number that's in the denominator to become in the numerator, and the number that's in the numerator to end up in the denominator. And if it's a negative, we want our negatives to become positive. All right, C you should be able to do yourself. C is solve, and what does solve tell us to do? Plug in for who? Y. So I'm going to let you do C on your own. What we're going to do is I'm going to really quick go over the absolute value with you. Absolute value, is it a one-to-one function? No, it's our what? It's our V shape, right? And so every point but the cusp is going to have a repeating Y, right? All right, so it's the same thing here. Once I figure out what V of 7 is, I know that V of X equals whatever that value is, right? That's just simple substitution. Now, when you take the absolute value of a number, their absolute value can have, I'm sorry, my board is not being friendly right now, can have a positive and negative solution. So if my outcome is 2, that means it could have been a positive 2 or a negative 2. If my outcome is 4, that means it could have been a positive 4 or a negative 4, just like the quadratic, because they both fail the what test? Horizontal line test. They both fail the horizontal line test, which make them not one-to-one. So I want you to practice this one. Yeah, I'm leaving these for you to practice. Remember you guys said you need more practice problems? Yes.
We're gonna go to the back.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the back. Yes, Dulce.
On C, we do both positive and negative.
On C? It's just the neg.
Just
Oh, yes, to find well, what's going to happen on C is that it's going to come out and give you the two separate answers.
yeah, if we use the plus and minus.
It's going to give you the two separate answers. Good job, Dulce. So on C, for both of them, I should end up with 2. All right, let's move on to the back. On 6, what kind of function is this? On 6, it's a quadratic. It's a quadratic function, okay? And it tells me that this quadratic function, it's going to have a vertical stretch or compression, right? It's going to either move left or right or up and down, okay? So it tells me all the information I need to figure out my vertical compression or stretch. It wants me to find the value of A. Well, first off, tell me what is X. If I go through point 1, 2, what is my X value?
1,
What is my Y value?
2.
Okay, do I know A?
No.
No, I'm looking for A. A is a question mark. Do I know C?
-3,
Do I know D?
6.
All right. So at this point, I can plug in what I know and solve for A, right? So Y is 2 equals, I don't know A. What's X?
1.
Minus.
So that makes it.
It's going to be, I'll write -3, so you can see Y becomes +3. And then +6, right? A negative times a negative is a,
Positive 6.
because, so this becomes 1 plus 3. So 2A, 2 equals A times, what's 1 plus 3? 4 squared is?
16.
So A times 16 plus 6. Man, can we solve this?
Yes, we can.
What do we do? What's the first thing I do? What I do to one side to the other, so what do I need to do to the sides? Subtract 6. 2 minus 6 is? -4 equals? Is A by itself yet? No, it still has a nasty little pest. So I divide by 16. So what is A? A equals -1/4.
Check.
Can I write the full function now? Yes. When you write the full function, you keep X and Y as variables. You do not plug in 1 and 2. So my function is Y equals -1/4 times X plus 3 plus 6. So can you tell me what happened to this quadratic? What does the negative tell me happened? It reflected over which axis? The X. What does the 1/4 tell me happened? It vertically compressed. Good job.
Would it be squared?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Didn't hear y'all. And what does the 3 tell me? It went to the left, and then the 6 tells me, look at that. You guys just described a transformation with words.
Oh, yeah, anything that's in
All right. So that's what you're doing. I want you to do 7 and 8. Hint for 8. Make sure, how do we get rid of this out of the denominator?
We
Multiply. You multiply by its reciprocal. Okay? So to get this out of the denominator, when it gets to this point, what are you going to do? Multiply by the reciprocal. I knew y'all were smart. I knew it. All right. Last one that we're going to do together is 9. 9. Instead of giving us words, they gave us a graph, right? So one thing we got to remember is that with a graph of a quadratic, the vertex, this is my vertex. The vertex represents my H and my K, right? But in this problem, instead of calling it H and K, it's also known as C and D. So I already know my H and my K, right? And I know it passes through this point, so this plays as my X and my Y. Can I solve for A? Yes, I have my C and my D, and I have my X and Y. So I can solve for A. So what's C? What's D? What's X? What's Y? Are we ready for the show? Here we go. So negative 3 equals A, because we do not know our, times 10 minus 5 squared plus 7. How do I get A by itself? I'm going to subtract 7. What do I do to one side? I must do to the. So negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10 equals A, parentheses. Oh, I'm sorry. What's 10 minus 5? And what's 5 squared? What's left? Divide by 25. So what is A?
Negative 2 over 5.
Negative 2 over. Can I write the equation of this function now?
Yes.
What is the equation of this function?
Y.
Y equals negative 2 over 5 x minus 5
Squared.
plus 7.
Beautiful. So everything we've learned in this unit has now come together. Yep. That's what it was all for.
Wow.
Hey. All right, last one. This is the cusp of the absolute value. The cusp. The cusp is where, instead of calling it a vertex because it's not curved, it's called the cusp because it's a sharp meeting point. Okay? So this is the cusp. And again, the cusp is my H and my K, but for this situation, it's also known as my C and my D. My X and my Y is the point I pass through. So what's X and Y? And negative 2. All right, guys, you have all of the tools to finish this and study for your test on Monday. Going through this should help you be able to complete your extra credit that's also due before your test. I believe as of right now, your extra credit is 15 points towards your test grade. So if you get all of the extra credit correct, you can get 15 extra points to your test, which means that you can make up to 115 on your test. Okay? Your review and the work and the answers to your review should be posted by Sunday evening, because I'm going to go through the review and work every single problem and give you the answers to every single problem, so that between now and then, my hope is that you are actually studying for your test, and on Sunday, all you need to do is check your answers and make sure you understand what you are doing. Yes, Dulce?
Absolute value makes everything inside positive.
Absolute value makes everything inside come out positive.
So the A positive.
So the 2 would be positive. No, it makes what comes out positive. So your 8 is going in negative, it's going to stay negative.
But it's going to be plus 6.
Yes. So the negative 2 is going to come out as a positive 2. All right. Please check either Facebook, La Vega website, or the YouTube, which is www.youtube.ShaunaSW, for your test review.